And 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And here we go. Wow, life as a Mormon. What is that like, or what was it like?
I think it was probably like everybody else. When you're living that life, you don't think anything of it. It's just your life and your experience, and I think it'd be unremarkable to any other Mormon at all. So
how many years did you go to services as a Mormon?
From the time I was born until about age 22 is when I stopped going to church, but I didn't stop believing in the church. I just kind of got wore out. It's one of those religions that demands a lot of its members, so it's kind of easy to get worn out on some of the trying to fulfill what the church asks you to do.
So that our viewers understand, you live in Utah, you were growing up, I'm assuming, near the Salt Lake area, and kind of fill us in just the geography of where you were going to church.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in the Salt Lake Valley, they call it. So there's a bunch of cities in there, but anyone who visits would just consider it a suburb of Salt Lake. And I grew up in Bountiful and Taylorsville, if anyone's interested, but yeah, just bedroom communities of Salt Lake. And I now live in Central Utah, but I moved to Central Utah as an adult. But that's where I grew up. And
brothers and sisters, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was Mormon, so there's it's a mixed match of kids because my parents have both been married and divorced. But there's 10 siblings altogether between a few different marriages, and so there's a big family.
So I understand. Early 20s, you kind of stopped going to the church. Did other family members start to look at you? Hey, why aren't you in church? Or did nobody care?
I think all of my siblings have fallen away from the church now, except for one. My dad has had a lot of concern about it. The mother of some of my siblings, because like I said, it's a mixed match, I'm sure is concerned about it. But no, by and large, it wasn't so much the family. A lot of my family on my mom's side was, we call them Jack Mormon. People have fallen away from the church, either still believe but don't participate, or have just fallen away altogether. So I didn't get a ton of blowback from the family. Just particular members of the family felt strongly, but not the whole family.
So was there any kind of turning point in your 20s there that you started listening to the stories and the things you read that were bothering you, or was it just like many churchgoers, we just got lazy and we didn't want to go to church?
I smile because, you know, kind of like when you wake up and you realize you've been dreaming. You know, when you're in the dream, everything's very serious and you take it like it's real life. I was full-blown dream mode up until age 30, 31, and I was nothing. It all happened in an hour. My belief in the Mormon Church went away at the same time it went away with all religion, and it was all in the space of an hour in one afternoon, listening to or watching a YouTube video, which was a Christopher Hitchens debate with I think it was with Jackson. What was Reverend Sharpton.
Yep.
And I was done 1 hour listening to Hitchens debating Sharpton, and then I just delved down that rabbit hole. And it wasn't like, okay, Mormonism isn't true. Maybe there's another church that's true. It all just went away at once. I woke up instantly, and I've been trying to reform the structure that we all have a structure that we have built up. How do we interact with life? And I've had to rebuild that whole framework, because before everything was the framework of my life was how do I interact? What's the meaning of life? Where are we going when we die? Where do we come from? All this stuff was built on Mormonism. And so when it went away, it wasn't like I was literally just floundering for probably a good few years until I started finding a new framework to live life through and give life meaning and live a moral life without religion.
So go back to that moment, like within an hour you were stating, when you realized Mormonism, you felt like, I don't know, maybe you'd been deceived, maybe this was untruthful, the stories they were telling you. What was it that really clicked that you went, this doesn't make sense?
Well, when I saw that debate and I started thinking about religion in totality, it almost like it gave me permission in my mind to go start reading about the church history. And that's really the first time I ever read I began reading the history of the church from any other point of view than the church. The church puts out, I say the church, the Mormon Church puts out its own narrative on its own history. And it permits its members and encourages its members to read its own history from its own point of view. And it discourages any reading of church history outside of that. And so for the first time where I felt like, maybe some of the things people are writing about the Mormon Church are not because they don't like Mormons. Maybe it's not the enemies of the church necessarily putting out the information. Maybe it's just people without a dog in the fight, and maybe it is okay to read some of it, and maybe some of it isn't lies. And so when I started to be able to research that and not feel guilty for kind of going against what the church teaches, I felt very deceived. It was amazing how quickly Joseph Smith came into view as the fraud that he was, and the charlatan that he was. I'm not gonna, I don't have any interest in railing against him, but he's like a lot of cult leaders. He was charismatic, he was handsome, he was tall, he isolated his followers, he took them away from the places of their friends and their families to kind of, get them in a place where he had more control of them. And then he started taking 10% of their money and marrying their women and, pretending to speak for God or as a prophet. And it became clear what he was doing, what his motive was after I got a fresh set of eyes to look at it without the social, when you're growing up in the church, I don't want to say necessarily brainwashed, but I don't know what else to call it. They have you repeat things enough times and you're around enough people repeating the same things in this echo chamber that it becomes true to you, whether it's true or not.
Well, I always wonder this about all religions. What is the difference between a religion and a cult? And we can have this debate about Christianity and all forms of it. Sometimes I don't know the difference. I really don't.
I like Joe Rogan's take on it. I think he said, either he quoted someone or he said it, but he said a religion is a cult where the leader has died. And it could be that simple.
Yeah.
It may, look, every religion, if you go back to its origins, at the time it started, would have been recognized by everyone around it as a cult. When Jesus was on the earth, if he was in fact, and he had his group of apostles and he was starting his preachings, there were a lot of mainstream Jews who felt like it was a fringe cult offshoot. And you look at David Koresh, you look at Jonestown, you look at, where are they dissimilar? Well, the dissimilarities begin that cults are only labeled cults when they're not successful. And then when they become successful, we say, oh, that's a religion. And what makes them successful is membership. How big do they grow? How far does it spread? And at some point we say, well, it can't be a cult if that many people follow it. It must be something more. And it gets a religion status at some point. There's people today with 13, 14, 15 million Mormons who still will say that Mormonism is just a huge cult. There's people that will say that about the Church of Scientology. And I would have to agree that it's a cult.
Interesting.
It's big enough now that some people say it's a religion, so.
Yeah, well, I was raised Protestant, and we always used to joke we're sort of Catholic light. I feel like it was a bunch of Catholics, and they were looking at their watches and looking at the services and going, "How do we shorten this?" Well, we'll come up with a new religion. We'll get everyone out of here in 45 minutes, and we'll keep the songs a little shorter. We'll keep the sermon a little shorter, and we're out of here. But I look at my own teachings, and listen, when I listen to things about a talking snake, when I listen to things about that a 600-year-old man collected every animal on planet Earth and put it on a boat, he built the boat with just a couple guys, and every animal just happened to be living where he was at, apparently, and he saved all the creatures on the earth. When I hear stories like this, I've got to go to myself and go, I don't even know what you people are talking about. So I'm assuming Mormonism, though I've tried to learn a lot about it, has similar stories where you're just shaking your head going, people, what is going on?
Mormonism is worse because it's worse because it's all of everything you said, plus some more. Joseph Smith came up with more stuff to add to the standard works, the Bible. He added the Pearl of Great Price, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Book of Mormon. And those three books, those three editions are chock full of unlikely things. Angels visiting, giving golden plates that were buried in the ground, translating the Book of Mormon, these gold plates, into English from a language that no linguist can find any evidence ever existed. When Joseph Smith claimed the Book of Mormon was written in Reformed Egyptian, but there's no sign of a Reformed Egyptian or anything like what he described in all of the history of the world that's been discovered. And then to say that he used rocks to stones to look into and to translate. Well, there's good evidence. It's debated by the church, and it may be for good reason, but there's good evidence that Joseph Smith was looking into rocks years before, leading local people on treasure hunts, and moved to a new area and started a new fraud using rocks again. And there's just so many things in the Book of Mormon. My biggest problem with religion has a lot less to do with whether or not we should believe that Jonah was actually swallowed by a whale and lived in there for 3 days.
I love that story, by the way, too. Yeah, one of my favorites.
Well, there's really evil things in the Old Testament. In Leviticus, if you look back and say, the other day my son was being a little bit mouthy. He's 9. And I read him a scripture from Leviticus that said that if your son is disbehaving, then you can bring him before the elders of the city and complain to them, and the men of the city shall gather together and stone your son to death. And I said, you should listen to me. Look, according to the Bible, I can have you stoned to death for being disobedient. And, there's all kinds of problems with homosexuality. That's punishable by death. Women should not speak in church. There's misogynistic. There's, how to keep your slaves, as if it was condoned then. I mean, you're giving instructions on how to keep your slaves. My problem with religion became actually a moral one. I started to wonder, why are we eating around the fly in the soup? I mean, the soup's great. There's good things in the Bible, but there's flies in there, and we're eating around these terrible flies, these awful doctrines and preachments to do awful, terrible things. There's genocide in the Old Testament. There's the Christian faith now that says, well, Eric, calm down because Jesus came and he brought a new law. Okay, but why was there ever? Why was it okay? Why was that okay? This should have never been. Right. Why did the 10 Commandments say the first 4 10 Commandments are about how to worship God? And then he gives us 6 no-brainers. Where's the one? Why didn't we have a commandment? Let's lose one of those the 4 about God and just have one that says, hey, thou shalt not have or keep slaves. I mean, this is simple stuff that could have avoided. There's a huge debate about whether or not the Christian faith is responsible for slavery, since the Bible seems to condone it, or if they're not maybe responsible for disbanding or getting rid of slavery. There's people on both sides saying the Bible is used to justify slavery, and there's people saying, oh no, it was the Christians, that it was because of our Christian beliefs that we got rid of slavery. It could have all been avoided with one of the 10 Commandments just saying don't take slaves, instead of one that says don't take my name in vain. I mean, or let's have 11 commandments. It's absurd. I just got tired.
No, you're absolutely. We'll reference the King James Bible is very, very clear about slavery. There's no even debate about it, and I don't know how we can consider that a moral book when we are clearly talking about keeping other people as slaves and as property. And I think as long as you do that, I don't know how there can be morality. And like you said, why would you not clear that up? Why would you not have sort of 2.0, version when the New Testament came along and say, look, I want you guys to be clear about this. You do not keep another human as a slave, but there's none of that. And that's where it gets really weird. And then what a lot of people try to do, even in my own teachings, is they'll try to throw the Old Testament out. They'll just toss it away. And then there's real problems when you do that, because if we're going to get rid of the Old Testament, and I'm not an expert on the Bible, I'm not a theologian, but then you've got to get rid of, what do I want to say? You've got to get rid of the fact that Christ rose from the dead, the resurrection. Isn't that the Old Testament?
Yeah, I mean, the Old Testament gives prophecies about that Jesus came to fulfill, actually. And so, if we get rid of the Old Testament, then Jesus quotes the Old Testament quite prolifically in the New Testament. And there's so many problems that we wouldn't even have time to go into, as far as Mormonism being more complicated and more incorrect and more difficult than just standard Christianity.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and I was also going to say about the Old Testament too. You'd have to get rid of also the 10 Commandments, right?
Yeah.
So we got to throw those out.
This is a faith-style religion. It's come and choose what you want and cherry pick out what you perceive to be good. and then going around to the masses and proclaiming that good things come from religion, that morals come from religion. And I would say what a lot of non-believers would also say, which is that religion got its morals from us. We didn't get our religions from morals. If you got rid of religion, our morals would still be innate in us. And to some extent, I believe, and I've delved off into kind of a more scientific view of things. I like to study a scientific view of the world now. Instead of believing in creationism, I look more to evolution. And instead of, there's a lot of things that have changed for me that kind of give me permission the world's starting to make a lot more sense to me. And what I've noticed is, if you want to, we're social, people are social animals. We're, by and large, we're group animals. And when you do certain behaviors that are antisocial, you become ostracized and the group pushes you out and it doesn't feel good. And one of the things you could do to get the group to push you out is you could sleep with your neighbor's wife, or you could steal, or you could kill or murder. It's more specifically. There's things you can do to get the society to push you out. And so what has happened is, throughout the evolution of our species, those of us in society who have done more of those antisocial behaviors have been afforded a less and less opportunity to reproduce, because we haven't had opportunity to marry within our group if we're being ostracized and we're being pushed out and no one wants us, around. And so what's happened is that the genetic traits that predispose people for antisocial behavior have become less and less prolific as our species has continued. And so what you're left with, by and large, is a massive amount of people who just innately will behave socially. And it's almost interchangeable with morals, social and morals. If you got religion out of it, you could say, well, pro-social behavior is moral behavior, which is you found someone's wallet and you returned it to them. You didn't steal, you didn't murder, you didn't rape, you didn't lie, you didn't commit adultery. Wow. Most of us wouldn't do those things if religion went away, because we are social. We're pro-social creatures, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think religion got it from us.
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense, and I agree with you. I don't steal something from my neighbor. I don't do that because it's in my well-being not to do that. I don't want my neighbor stealing from me. So my thinking is not that somebody's watching me up in the sky, that I'm doing something wrong. I'm not going to do it because I want to live in a society that I want everyone not to steal and not to hurt each other. And I know if I don't do it, I think that's going to, we've sort of got a moral agreement with each other, is to kind of, let's be good to each other. I won't hurt you. You won't hurt me. I'll be nice to you. You be nice to me. And that's the reason I'm the person I am. It's not necessarily because somebody's looking up from the sky at me.
Yeah, it's not because someone has got a stick in one hand and a carrot in the other saying, which one do you want? It's because I think you want to be a member of society and I want to be a member of society. And when you do antisocial things, anything you can think of that's antisocial, you can link to morality and it draw the parallel. Well, that's an immoral act. It's an unethical act. Well, it's also antisocial. If it's pro-social, it's also moral. And it's funny how we've decided to take those attributes and give them over, just let religion hijack them and convince us that they provided it to us from God. There may or may not be a God. I don't know anything about that. I do know that religion is false. I know it's man-made, made by men for men. And if you need any evidence of it, read it from a woman's perspective and see if there's anything good in there for women in any of the holy books from any of the world's three major religions. It's definitely man-made.
No, you're absolutely correct. I want to go back to then. So you left the church. You basically said, this is not for me. What happens then? Do you just stop going to services and everything's great in Utah, or how? Give us some sense of what your life became then.
Well, to be 100% honest and frank, to a little bit of my embarrassment, some of the biggest problems I ran into when I left religion wasn't necessarily the ostracization from fellow members. I moved to central Utah before all this, and I ended up in a more or less kind of split down the middle. I'm sure everyone identifies as LDS around here, but most aren't really practicing, and so it wasn't really that big of a deal where I am now. There are communities. I have friends, cousins, relatives in the Salt Lake Valley and the Provo area who they are scared to death. They come to me privately. And they message me privately and say, Eric, you're brave for leaving. I can't do it. I don't believe it, but I can't do it. It might hurt my marriage. My spouse may leave me. The kids in the neighborhood, my kids won't be able to play with them because all the other people in our congregation live in the neighborhood. That's how you get your congregations is geographic location. And so when they see that I've left the church, our kids can't have social lives, and we can't have social lives. And it's a big problem for a lot of members in Utah. It wasn't so much for me because of where I ended up being at when I left. The biggest problems that came from this for me were I lost my framework. I almost became a nihilist for a year or two. And in that mindset, if there is no such thing, if religion's false, and if that's where I'd been going to get my beliefs and how to interact with the world, and now that's all gone, then how do I do it now? And so it was kind of like just tripping around in the dark for a couple of years, figuring out a life philosophy to live by. And I lost a lot of friends through just bad choices myself, just because I think I lost I allowed logic to I don't want to say that if you lose religion, then you now get a carte blanche to go do awful things. I think that I was at a tough place in my life, tough place with my career, tough place with my marriage, and I lost my religion all at the same time, and I felt lost and abandoned to the world, and I didn't know where to go with it. And so I kind of did trial and error to figure out my belief systems all over again. If I hadn't been raised in religion, my parents would have hopefully taught me a secular view of morality from the time I was born. I wouldn't have had to figure it out in my early 30s, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total. I mean, I can imagine. It's kind of like you've been. Or this is what you felt, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think you felt inside, oh my God, I've been lied to all these years. None of this makes any sense. Now, where is my moral compass? But probably religious people would say, well, see, that's why you need to stay in religion. That's what they're going to say when they see that. Oh, that he lost his way because he wasn't going into the Mormon Church anymore.
No, and I wouldn't. And for a year or two, I might have to sit and agree with them. The problem is once you don't believe in Santa Claus anymore, you can't go back and believe it. And I'm not trying to mock religion by saying that. What I mean is, imagine when you realize say at 20 you haven't believed in Santa Claus for 10 years, or even 15 and you haven't believed in Santa Claus for 5 years or something, or 6 or 7. How would you convince an adolescent or a young adult to go back to a belief system that maybe benefited them, but you can't believe what you can't believe? I mean, so you're lost one way or the other, because I can't go back and believe something that's so clearly fraudulent to me now. Like, I just woke up. It's very clearly I was lied to. It's very, very clear. If it was benefiting me, I can't go back to it just because it's like the Matrix. When Neo wakes up and he realizes what the real world is, it's shit. It wasn't a good real world. It wasn't. But he knows when he goes back to the Matrix that it's a dream world. It's a lie. Cypher wanted to go back. He preferred it. He was ready to stab everyone in the back to go back. No one else could go back to it. And some of them probably wish they never would have woke up. But you know what? I'm glad I woke up. And I'm glad that I found that my morals and ethics were not given to me by third parties pretending to speak to a God that I've never met. I'm very glad to have my morals and values and ethics in line with most Christians and Muslims and Jews, but from a secular position without all the flies in the soup. I'm eating great soup now with no flies. They're just carefully eating around the flies in their soup, pretending there's no flies there. What if I don't see a fly? Oh, no, it's just a big, that's pepper. Whatever they're telling themselves to ignore the truth of, the fact is there are some terrible preachments from all of the world's major religions, and they're awful, just terrible. And I don't want anything to do with them. I'll just take the good and leave religion altogether.
So give us some inside look of what it was like growing up as a Mormon. What do they do to keep you close to that church and keep you indoctrinated? What is it that they do that really kept you around for as long as they did?
It's like never giving you a minute to breathe. I mean, it's like they never give you a chance. It's amazing. I think it's harder now with the internet. I think it's harder now with everyone having powerful computers in their hands with search engines. But, I didn't grow up with that. And maybe if I was growing up now, I would have never believed as long as I did. But it was a little bit easier in the 90s and early 2000s to keep members isolated. Even with the technology we had, it was just a lot easier. So you actually had to go to a library and rent books or something, or, to figure out the history of the church from another point of view. You actually had to go work at it. So what the church did was they had services for 3 hours on every Sunday. And then part of the doctrine of the church is to have a family home evening on Mondays, which is essentially an hour and a half long church service at home with just your family. And you get a lesson, and you read scriptures, and you read the Book of Mormon, and you bear testimony of the church's veracity to your own members of your own family on Monday nights. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, they'd have something. You'd either have Scouts, Boy Scouts, which was hosted by the church, and you'd go to the church, and the Scout leaders were actually members of your ward who were called. They receive a calling from the leadership of the church to be a Scoutmaster. And so there was actually a church-appointed position to be a Scoutmaster where I grew up. And what they would do is you'd start with a prayer, and sometimes you'd have a scripture, and then you'd go do your Scout stuff, but it was always under the eye of a priesthood holder in the church. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, there was something called young men's and young women's, so the young men of the church, the teenage boys and the teenage girls would have their own meetings at the church for an hour or two. And then the other night they'd get together and have them as conjoined male and female, girls and boys. And so really Sunday through Thursday, you're doing something pretty much after school every day that's church related, and it's reindoctrination, every night. And then to make things a little bit more interesting, they would actually have you as a young man go with your father to, they'd assign you members of the church that every single month you'd go to their house and you'd have a mini church session with them. You'd read to them from the church's publications. The Ensign is a magazine the church puts out, and you'd go and give your neighbors a lesson from the Ensign, that month's edition of the church's publication. And then in turn, you would receive somebody from the church to your house once a month, and they would do the same thing to you. So there's 2 more days. And then the young women and the women of the church had something called visiting teaching, where they would do the same thing, but they would just go teach the women. And really what it came down was the men were trying to reinforce to other men in the church what their role is as priesthood holders, and the women in the church were trying to reinforce to the women what their role is in the home. And so really there's even more. Every member of the church is given a calling. On top of all this, you have another calling. So if you're Scoutmaster, that's your calling. If you're the ward clerk, that's your calling. If you hand out the hymn books on Sunday, that's your calling. But there's many, 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 many callings. And there's more and more and more we could go into. But basically, from going and collecting fast offerings, you're living. It's not Mormonism is not, it's not an accessory to your life. It is central. It is your life. And then anything else is accessory to it. It's not one of those churches where you can go to once a week for an hour or two and get feeling good and go home and that's it. Pass the hat, give the preacher some money. It is a way of life. It is a lifestyle. And when you are shooken from that life, when you're shook from that lifestyle, you are left just dizzy. Like, where am I? What if you get out of that church, you are confused. Like, how do I interact with the world now?
Interesting. So basically what you're saying is we keep you so busy, you don't have time to get in trouble. You don't have time to do anything, to even look at the world around you. And we do this through you growing up until you're an adult.
Yeah, I mean, when you hit 12, they give you a mini wallet-sized pamphlet that you're supposed to keep in your wallet. And you go to school with it, and it tells you how you're supposed to behave at school. I mean, there's good things in it. Don't get me wrong. Like, don't do drugs and don't do the peer pressure. But it is so all-encompassing. If you live your religion as a Mormon, if you take it seriously, it is so all-encompassing. It really is the point of your entire existence. And you're made to feel as though this life really is just a blink of the eye compared to the eternities, and you better behave in this life and do what the church says, and you'll get all the rewards after, and don't worry, the next life will be great. Just for this life, give us 10% of your money and do as we say, and you'll be blessed when you die. And I feel kind of bad, really bad, for people who are on that ride, because I don't know that you get more than one life. And to spend it in the service of third parties who are pretending to speak for God to you and control you and take your money, that's a sad life. I think it's a type of slavery in and of itself, where you're not behind bars. You don't see your cell, but you're not living. You're not getting life experience. It keeps you infantile. I think that Mormon religion and other religions that are overwhelmingly, when they take up that much of your time in your life, they keep you childlike in your mental capacity to reason and think critically and to explore life and see what life really does have in store for you.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because that it sort of enslaves you, and probably for most people, they're just scared to do anything else, correct?
Well, yeah, where do you go to from there? I mean, it's like they open the cell door and they let people look in. Oh, these aren't prisoners. The door's open.
Right.
The door's open. But you've told your prisoners what's outside that door and scared them silly. They don't want to leave and go out to Look at Plato's cave. These guys don't know their whole life what's going on out. They see shadows and they think what could be out there. You know what I mean? And when one of the prisoners in Plato's cave leaves and comes back, the other two can't believe what they're being told. But it's kind of like that. It's like a prison where the doors are open. The church can wash their hands and say, look, we're not keeping any prisoners here. We're just telling them our point of view of what is outside the door. So they choose to stay, and they choose to give us 10% of their money, and they choose to do this and that, and it's slavery. It's slavery of the mind,
Interesting. Let's talk about, and all religions have this, but when you were growing up and you were hanging around other teens and young kids, are people very obedient to the religion, or would you find, yeah, we're all going to services, but if you knew what we were doing in our free time, we'd all be stunned? Or does everybody live a clean and religious life that you found?
Well, I think my experience getting older and seeing more of other religions and other people is there are just people who take stuff serious, and there are people who don't. And so you'll have people that take their religion very serious no matter what their religion is. And then inside that same religion, you'll have people that put on the outward appearance of taking it seriously to enjoy the social benefits of the outward behavior. But inwardly, they either know it's a joke, or they think it's a joke, or they don't believe it. Or, for example, I had a friend when I was a teenager who on Saturday nights, he would go break into cars and steal stereos. And then the next day on Sunday, we'd go to church and we'd be blessing and passing the sacrament together as priesthood holders. And I mean, I knew what he was doing, and I mean, he knew what he was doing. And, my understanding was he was working on his thieving issues with the ward bishop and repentance. And I didn't feel like it was my business whether or not he was considered worthy to bless and pass the sacrament at church. But I didn't feel like it was my business, but I knew I took it very seriously to make sure that I was living in a way that would qualify me to hold the priesthood in the eyes of the church. I guess I'm just the kind of person where I see stuff, I see what's going on around me, but like I take it serious, and I'm not into other people's business. And so it's like every church, I think. You'll find serious people, and you'll find the guys that drink Saturday night and come to church Sunday and give a good talk about, being sober or whatever.
Let's talk about some of the kooky things. I find this fascinating. Fill me in from an insider's point of view. Things like magic underwear. I don't think anybody out there other than Mormons know about this. You need to talk about that. And I think it's also interesting, you mentioned this, that you have to give a big chunk of your salary to the Mormon Church.
Yeah. We'll go in order. Well, maybe actually reverse order would be better for this, because you get your magic underwear or the garments from the temple. The Mormon temple is where you are first to wear them.
And when do you wear them? Eric, when do you actually wear this? Is it every night?
No. Okay, so what happens is you're a regular guy or gal, and you grow up as a Mormon until you get something called your endowments. And when you get your endowments, you're given your garments, your underwear.
What do they call it, by the way? So let's call it the right thing.
They call them the garment. They call
garments.
them garments.
Okay, not magic underwear. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, when you listen to what they believe the underwear does for you, it would be hard to not confuse them with magic.
Okay.
But basically, when most men in the church get their garments or their underwear from the church at the time that they decide they're going to go serve a 2-year missionary service, a proselytizing mission for the church, which they pay for themselves, as a matter of fact. So the church has a good thing going because they have people going to preach for them and get more members for them, and they're actually paying to the church to do it for them. It's a good way to do it if you're going to do it for the church. These young men turn 19, now it's 18. They lowered the age, probably because people are figuring out younger and younger that the church isn't true, and so they had to kind of make it so that if they're going to get missionaries out in the field, they need to get them even younger. I don't know about you. I'm 36. 18-year-olds to me are just little kids. I mean, they're children. I remember being 18 and thought I was an adult, but the church is basically sending out just babies, and I feel bad saying it, but they are. And they went from 19 to 18, and I think the reason might be because of the fact that they're having more and more young men fall away from the church younger and younger as more and more information is available. But that being said, that's when most of them will get their endowment. So before you can go on and serve a Mormon mission, you have to go to the temple and get your endowments. And that's where you'd start wearing your underwear. And from there on, you wear it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year until you die. You're buried in them. You're buried in them. And
wait, you're buried in the magic underwear at the end. You put that on, and then they put your suit on, and okay, okay.
And a lot of members of the church are buried in temple clothes. So on top of your garment, when you go to the temple, you wear special clothes over the garment. And many people choose to be buried in their temple clothing, expecting to be resurrected and expecting to have to go through certain types of handshakes and know certain things to say to certain people to get into heaven, wearing certain clothes. So those are worn 24/7 until you die from the time you get them. For most women, they don't get them till they're married in the temple. So Mormons get their marriage ceremony done in a temple, and that's most of the guys have gone on a mission and already have their garment, and that's usually when they get a wife and their wife starts wearing them from then on too. So
okay, so you're using that magic underwear your whole life. Now, what about if I go into the Mormon religion? I have to give a certain amount of my paycheck to them. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the Mormon Church believes in something they call it the law of tithing, and it's one of the things that you promise in the temple that you'll do as a member of the church. The point of going to the temple is to promise certain things to God. One of them is that you'll obey the law of tithing, and you'll always give 10% of your increase to the church. And so every time you get paid, you cut a check to your ward bishop for 10% of that. And if you're not honest with your bishop and he finds out, or you don't pay your 10%, he'll take away your temple recommend. The temple recommend is important because that's what allows you to go into the temple. Anytime you'd like to go to a temple anywhere in the world, you can go as long as you present the guy at the desk with your temple recommend. And it needs to be signed by your stake president and your bishop. And if one of them revokes that or suspends it or takes it away, you can't enter into the temple. If you can't enter into the temple, you cannot participate in the ceremonies. It's believed that if you're not a member in good standing with the temple recommend, you're at risk that if you die in such a state that you may not be worthy to enter into heaven, the highest degree of glory. They believe in degrees of glory, degrees of heaven, and the highest one, you would definitely want to be a card-carrying temple recommend carrying member at the time of your death, or you might have some splaining to do on the other side, and maybe have to get a little bit of mercy to be allowed in.
So what's the frickin' percentage you've got to give away? How much is it, did you say?
10%.
10%. So 10%, is it gross or net?
Well, there's argument about that. The strong-minded Mormons will, some people, I think it's a competition to who's more spiritual than who. So
there you go.
One member may say, I see you pay on your net. That's cool. I pay on my gross. Maybe I'm a little more spiritual than you. That kind of nonsense, but I think you can get away with either one. The scripture itself says on your increase. Some people don't consider their gross to be their actual increase because Uncle Sam takes his cut. So
holy crap. So do you give it from each paycheck, like each week? Is it like a monthly deal, a yearly? How does that work?
Some people pay yearly. Some people just say, hey, I'm going to just pay it all up front this year. Some people pay weekly with their paycheck. Some people pay monthly.
Do people grumble when they do it, or does no one say anything? Nobody thinks that's odd. They work hard, and you're working hard paving streets in Salt Lake, and then it's like the tax man coming again.
Oh, Randy, it's Old Testament stuff, though. You can't even argue. It's not even Joseph Smith's idea. If you look at the Old Testament, the law, there's tithing in there. Tithing comes from Latin or Greek or whatever for a tenth. It's a fixed thing, even in the Old Testament. And I think a lot of Christians outside of Mormonism would agree that a tithe is 10%. I don't know what other churches require it, but it's in there. It's in all the scriptures.
Gosh, but do you really think like Protestants and Catholics are giving 10%? I just don't feel like that. I see the offering go around, and I go, there's $1, there's $5, and that's pretty much it.
You can't get people to give you 10%. If you're going to be a Catholic or you're going to be a Protestant and you're not going to get your members to invest their lives into that organization like you do as a Mormon, you couldn't convince people to give 10%. They'd fall away from your church and say, this is crazy. There's no way I can give you 10%, because they're not nearly as invested. Not nearly as invested as a believing Mormon. You're invested. You know what I mean? You're giving that 10%, and you expect blessings. You expect that you're going to be compensated through The Mormon Church actually believes that if you pay your tithing, the result will be temporal blessings or physical financial blessings, that you will actually do better financially if you give it. And that's what the church actually teaches, that you'll be better off financially temporarily for paying it. So the ones that believe this are giving it excited because they think it's going to really benefit them financially to do it in another way, or temporarily in another way, or at least they feel like they'll always have the security of knowing that they won't go without, because the church really won't let you go without. If you can't pay your mortgage and if you have a temple recommend and you can't pay your mortgage that month, you can ask the bishop to help you out, and he generally will help people struggling with food, rent, that kind of stuff. But it is required that you will pay your tithing to receive that. So
interesting. Anything else real weird, just really odd that you have found through Mormonism? Just quirky things like this, the underwear. What else? Is there things that would astound me?
We do have a history with polygamy in the church, and Mormons today still believe polygamy is an eternal law. So whether Mormons today practice polygamy or not, any Mormon who's a believing Mormon does believe that polygamy is something that will be happening in the next life. We just don't do it now because the government won't allow it or whatever. Our church was fractured early on because when Utah wanted to become a state, polygamy had to be banned in order for the federal government to allow Utah statehood. And there was a faction of the church that broke off and said, well, this is awful. You don't change your doctrine just because the government. And so they went and kept their own way of life down in southern Utah. And they're fundamentalist Mormons who still practice polygamy. And you've probably heard of Warren Jeffs. He was on the FBI's top 10 most wanted and all that. But so some quirky things would be, for example, as a Mormon man, I could get married in the temple, and then I could get divorced in the temple, or I could just get divorced civilly. And then I could go get married again in the temple to my new wife. And I could actually be married under the church's eyes. I'm married now to 2 women simultaneously. Civilly, in society, I only have 1 wife, but the church will recognize that I have 2 wives. And unless I go to the temple and get a temple divorce from one of those women, they're both my wives in the next world.
Go back to that, Eric. So then you divorce her, but then she still wants to stay with you?
Well, no, what would happen is basically, if I got married and divorced, let's say I got married 5 times and divorced 4 times, and all of them were temple marriages.
Okay.
I am now married in the eyes of the church to 5 women simultaneously. However, because I went to the state of Utah and got a divorce, the state of Utah only recognizes that I'm married to just the one. So if one of those women doesn't want to be married to me in the next life, they have to go to the church and try to get a temple divorce from me. Now, here's the interesting thing. Speaking of religion being made by men for men, women can't do that. If a woman gets divorced and she was married in the temple, gets divorced and wants to marry this new guy and wants to go to the temple, the Mormon church will say, no, you can't be married to 2 men in our eyes. You have to go get a temple divorce from that first guy, and then we'll give you a new temple marriage to this guy. So it doesn't work both ways. I could rake up 5 marriages and think I'm going to the next life with 5 women. 4 of them might hate my guts as my ex-wives. But the Mormon church doesn't think. The Mormon church believes you don't get into the celestial kingdom, the heaven, as a single person. You come in a pair. So if any of those women want to get to the highest degree of glory and they don't have a temple marriage to another guy, they're going to have to come with me as one of my exes, as one of my wives. Like, no, they're not getting in. So, and it's hard to get for a woman to get a temple divorce is very, very hard. It's just the church is clearly not all about that. It's for the men.
It's clear that men were making these rules. It's obvious.
Either God is clearly a man and it's really all true, and he just doesn't care for women, or some guys made this church and said they did it with communication from God, and I think that's much more reasonable belief.
So were some of your friends growing up with multiple wives, and I'm talking about people living all in the same house? Did you see much of that, or was that somewhere else?
No, the Mormon Church doesn't practice polygamy in society, just in the temple marriage, just as an idea. But then we believe when you die,
right,
you still have multiple wives. There are fundamentalist Mormons, and you see them around. You see them in Arizona and southern Utah. Right. You see them around. And yeah, they're a different church. They're a different Mormon church. They're an offshoot, and they would consider themselves to be the pure church, the real church. They have their own prophet. They have their own history of prophets going back to when the church stopped polygamy, and they disagreed with that decision, and they got their own new prophet. So, yeah, you see those people around, but they're not part of the 15 million member Mormon church that most people think of. They're pretty easily identifiable. They have magic underwear too. Their garments they kept originally. Originally the garment went down to your wrists and down to your ankles, and so the Mormons that you think of and that I think of that I used to be, they shortened them up to just t-shirt size and short size. So the fundamentalist Mormons are hard to miss because they will wear clothing to their wrist and down to their ankles. Even in the summer, women will wear dresses all the way down to their ankles because the Mormons believe they have to keep their garments covered. There are things stitched into the garment that are to be not seen by non-members. They're symbols that are sewn into the fabric, and so they're not supposed to be shown.
You know, I kind of get the whole. Well, hang on, I got to be careful here. I kind of get the whole idea of everyone in the old days living together, maybe even having multiple wives. 20 kids, because you had to farm, you had to work hard. I'm trying to understand why any man and any woman, why any man would want to have 5 wives. That would be exhausting just to make people happy. And then why any woman would want to share one man. I don't know. It's weird to me.
It's more brainwashing. It's more echo chambers. It's more from the time they're born. It's all that they know. I remember when I was 3 or 4 years old, I remember being put in front of a room full of children in primary school, which is what they call Sunday school for little kids in the Mormon Church. And a grown woman whispered in my ear and told me to repeat what she was saying. And she whispered in my ear, she said, "I'd like to bear my testimony." And what, you think I want to stand up in front of 100 other kids and bear my testimony as a 3-year-old? And then I was supposed to say, "I know the church is true. I know Joseph Smith is a prophet." This is something that is spoken from the pulpit every week by members of the church to each other. They take it in, they give it back, and it is reverberating around the building, and they believe it for 3 hours. This is done 3 hours a week, plus all the other times I told you about at night and whatever. Their whole lives. You can get people to believe, a woman, you can get her to believe that her highest calling in life would be to be a plural wife. For sure you can. You just have to start when they're young, when their brains are still developing, when they have no frontal lobe yet. And you got to make sure it's ingrained in them before they develop that frontal lobe. And you can do it, and it's done all the time.
What's your thoughts about the future of Mormonism? Do you think it will be around forever, or do you think it'll be, I don't know, someday like Greek mythology? I don't know, just disappears.
I think that in developed first world countries with a high rate of education, with high-speed internet, I think it's gonna have to fade a little bit. But it's very easy to go to developing countries and third world countries where people may not have access to the education, or they may not have the ability to do the critical thinking. They may not have the it may be appealing to them whether they believe in this nonsense or not, that the church might financially help them out. If you look at the rates, for example, I was a Mormon missionary for 2 years. I went first to France, and then I was reassigned to Quebec, to a French-speaking mission in Quebec. I didn't baptize a single person, not one, and hardly anyone I knew did. I mean, I wasn't just a bad missionary. It's just hardly anyone was baptizing hardly anyone. Most of our baptisms were actually people in Quebec or France that were immigrants from poorer third world countries. And then I had a brother that went to Argentina. And he was, as they say, dunking like Michael Jordan, as far as putting him under the water. And so, why is that? Well, a lot of it comes down to culture, education, economic situation. Some people just want to be part of the church because they know the church has a lot of ability to financially support them and give them food and things if they pay their tithing and all that. So I think it will stay strong anywhere that there's not critical thinking, first world status, high education, where minds stay a bit more basic because of just trying to survive versus we're bored and so let's talk philosophy. You don't have time for that in most parts of the Philippines. You're trying to eat,
right? So that's almost what you're saying is where you keep the information out, you keep the internet away. People don't have time to like you said, do critical thinking, it'll survive then.
Yeah, and if the United States becomes a country where we fall back into, Stone Age type stuff, where we're living in wiki-ups and stuff because, say, God forbid, war, nuclear, or something that knocks us back into the Stone Age. I mean, it definitely, I don't want this to be misconstrued. It has absolutely nothing to do with race. This is all about economic and access to education, access to information. So when I point to the France and I say, no one's getting baptized there, you go to Argentina, the Philippines, they are. It is nothing to do with race. I mean, you find that anywhere, the missionaries go where people just are trying to survive more than they're trying to be a philosopher, for example, you're going to get more baptisms and more membership in those places because the church does have a lot to offer somebody in that position, but it doesn't really have much to offer you or me or someone who's, got information and education and can support themselves and just I don't know what it has to offer us other than a sense of community. But all religion does that, really. I mean,
right.
That's one of the things that's been hard is not having that sense of community after leaving religion,
Yeah, what's always been weird to me about religion, and I don't care where on the planet you live, this has always been a strange one to me, is how all of us think that we joined the right church, the right God, and the other guy has it wrong. I find that fascinating. And you realize, think about this, Eric. The reason you went to the church you went to is because of your parents. They got up one day and took Eric to a temple. I got up one day, they took me to a Protestant church, and then forever on, that's what I believed. So it's just weird though how we all think that the other person's God is made up, but I've got it right.
It's just more evidence that it's false. It's actually evidence against. I'm not saying there's a God or not. I have no idea, but he definitely is. If he or she exists, he or she must not be an intervening God. He or she must not be setting up religion. Because to do so would be to exclude almost all of his or her children, if that's what we are, from salvation, really. Because if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you think there's only going to be 100,000 people that make it into heaven. If you're even within your own organization, you only think 100,000 of you are going to make it. As Mormons, we think only good Mormons will make it. As Catholics, whatever. My dad and I argue all the time about this stuff. And I tell my dad, do you think that any other church other than Mormonism has it right? And he'll say, of course, well, no. If they had it right, they would be the same church because every church is different because it has its own doctrine. Obviously, if it had the same doctrine as another church, it would be that church as well. So on its face, there can, in my dad's mind, and in anyone who goes to church, just their church has it right. So I say to my dad, well, let's not argue. We're so much more in agreement than we're not. You think every single church in the whole world is wrong except for one. I just think that every single church in the whole world is wrong, and that one too. It's not that big of a difference. I mean, we really agree, really almost entirely. Let's just agree that I just took it one church further than you did. You're throwing out thousands and thousands of churches. I'm throwing out thousands and thousands in one. So can we get along? We can't get along. My dad and I mean, he's very staunch in the church. And actually, I don't want him to not be a Mormon. He's 62. I was 31 when I woke up. It was traumatizing. I can't imagine investing twice that amount of time in life and then waking up to can you imagine you've been lied to for 30 years and then you figure it out? How much worse would it be at 62 to then figure it out? I mean, just let him, not to go back to the Matrix, but Morpheus says to Neo, I apologize to you. We have a rule. We never wake a mind when it reaches a certain age because it's too difficult on that mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think even if you have doubts as you get older, I think you reach a point where, and I think this is true about all religions, you don't want to admit that you could have been lied to or this doesn't make sense. I think you get to a point that you just go along with it because, that's hard facing yourself in the mirror and going, gosh, all that time I spent at the church or at the synagogue or wherever it might be, it was all made up. It's hard to admit that. It's hard to face that.
One of the hardest things I've ever done was I kept a friend from my mission to Quebec. And I'm actually going to go see him in a week or two. I'm driving up there with the kids in my van, and we're going to go up there and see him. But we stayed in good touch. And then I stopped taking his calls. When I stopped believing, I stopped taking his calls because my missionary companion at the time, the other missionary that I lived with and worked with, my colleague, he actually baptized him into the church. And he's still a member and still believing. And it was very, very hard for me to talk with him because when he would talk, he'd bring up God and religion and a way of life that is now foreign to me. And I didn't want him to see that I had fallen away because in some part, I was one that helped teach him to be a Mormon, and my companion baptized him. And when I finally had to tell him that I've fallen away and that I'm not a believer in that anymore, it was very, very difficult. And I was afraid of what that would mean to him because, like you say, wow, I mean, to go look in the mirror and say I've been wrong this whole time, it's even worse when you go to somebody you helped to bring in. And now you got to go to that person and say, I was wrong this whole time. I lied. I didn't lie. I didn't know I was wrong. But I've been lied to, and I propagated lies. And now I brought you in, and now I'm going to tell you that you've been a member of something for 15 years or whatever it's been since I was a missionary that I think is not true. And I helped bring you into it. I mean, it was a very tough conversation. He took it very graciously and very well and didn't care. He's happy being Mormon, and I'm happy not. And we're still going to hang out, and I'm happy about that. But it was tough. Yeah, what you're saying is true.
I think there's, I don't know, in the Mormon Church, there's got to be a high percentage of people that are just going through the motions, but they really don't believe all this. I have to think that.
Well, the church claims somewhere around 15 million members. If you look at actual attendance records, only about half actually go to church. Of those, I would say probably about half are not really even believing, but are going along with it for ulterior reasons, whether it be social, whether it be community, whether it be financial support, whether it be something. They're trying to get something from the church, or the pain and trouble of moving away from it is too great, so they just keep going. You know, they want to disappoint their friends and family or whatever. So I think the church touts 15 million members. I'd be amazed if more than a handful of few million have their heart in it. I did. I was one of them that did. I would have taken a bullet for the prophet. I would have done anything I was told. I was a good little soldier, and I was ready to get my celestial glory if I died in the service of God. And it's a good thing the Mormon Church isn't militant or doesn't have, extremist views like, holy war or whatever, because the fact that Mormonism doesn't ascribe to any of that, you can be a militant Mormon and you really don't pose a threat to anybody. You just are kind of always depressed and self-loathing and never feeling good enough. The more you believe, the worse you feel, I think. Where in other religions, you can be made to believe that maybe killing someone for religion is a good idea. Mormonism is not that way, so that's a good thing, because I had that extreme Mormon mindset. Do you know what I mean?
I've read a few things that you maybe have talked about. You've talked about what you label as radical Mormonism. What do you mean by that?
I just think that I took everything to when we say a fundamentalist, when I talked about the fundamentalist Mormons, they read the scripture for exactly what it is, and then they live by it. So polygamy's in there, so they're doing polygamy. When a fundamentalist Muslim reads the Quran and he sees a scripture about taking the head off of an infidel, a lot of non-fundamental Islamic people will say, well, we don't do that. We're peaceful. We're not going to do that. But the fundamentalists will say, no, absolutely, we need to do that. So I was radical in the same way. I was a fundamentalist Mormon. So whatever the scripture said, I absolutely just believed it as it was written. And so thankfully, the Mormon scriptures don't really, other than the Old Testament, they don't really call for violence, which, is the Old Testament is universal to all the Christian churches pretty much, and is obviously the cornerstone or the actual foundation of Judaism. So thankfully, that wasn't part of my mentality. But all the New Testament stuff, Book of Mormon stuff, Pearl of Great Christ, Doctrine and Covenants, I was very fundamental. I never drank coffee till I fell away from the church. I never drank alcohol till I fell away from the church. I never smoked cigarettes or anything like that. I still don't smoke cigarettes, but I've tried them. Just, see what the hubbub is about. Don't like them. So, I took everything very serious. The church believes in something called the word of wisdom, where you don't smoke or drink coffee or whatever. Anything the church said was gospel to me. So if the prophet would have got a new revelation and said, well, we're going to go to war with the feds over something, or if the prophet said, whatever he said, man, I was his man. I was his guy. I was fine with it. I believed 100%. So that's pretty extreme. When you could be controlled by the leader of your church, I mean, to be told to go jump off a bridge and you do it, I mean, that's some serious power. I would say that's extreme. I would say that's an extremist view that I held. Not that that ever happened. None of that would probably happen in a church like Mormonism, but that's the extent of my radicalization within the church, if that makes sense. When I grew up, I wanted to be a bodyguard for the prophet. I became a cop. And I think part of that was I got a fascination with some of the old church stuff. Like, for example, my grandfather's great-grandfather was one of the founders of the Mormon Church. Joseph Smith originally had 12 apostles. He called 12 people to help him build the church. And one of them was a guy named Parley P. Pratt. And I'm a direct descendant of his. And Parley P. Pratt is regarded by the Mormon Church as the greatest missionary of the modern day. So in the New Testament, you have like the Apostle Paul, great missionary. Since the Mormon Church believes that it is literally the church that Jesus Christ set up, but that church fell out of grace with God, and that Joseph Smith set it back up exactly as it was. Parley P. Pratt is like a modern day Paul as far as missionary work goes. And so I had a fascination growing up with Parley P. Pratt and the 12 apostles and Joseph Smith. And there was a guy, Joseph Smith had a bodyguard named what's his name? He was from originally Porter Rockwell. It was his bodyguard. And Porter Rockwell is actually in Western. If you read much about Western gunfighting or Western outlaw gunfight, gunslinger, he's probably got a higher body count than any. I think it's arguable that he might have the highest body count of people he's killed in the West. And his killing he's done for Mormonism. Joseph Smith made a lot of enemies, and that was his man. So when I was a kid, I kind of idolized all these guys, and I thought, maybe when I grow up, I'll go, the prophet has bodyguards. Maybe I could do that for a living. My whole life was just pointed towards service of the church, prophet, on and on. And so I think I was pretty extreme. I do.
Interesting part of your life. Okay. You left being a Mormon, and now you're living in a van. Explain.
Yeah. Well, when I left the church, my marriage was kind of floundering and suffering, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to hold on to my marriage. And it wasn't because my ex-wife was a believer. Apparently, I've come to find out when I fell away from the church and talked to her about it, I was concerned because I didn't know how she'd feel. Turns out that she's never believed, so it was kind of a relief. She'd been going along with whatever I wanted to do, and she'd never told me she didn't believe. But when I told her I didn't, she's like, whew, okay, great, because I don't either, never have. But eventually I quit copping at the time my marriage was kind of going down the tubes, because that job demanded a lot of time and attention, and it was a sticking point in my marriage. She didn't appreciate that job that I had, and it really wasn't family centric. So I thought I'll quit being a cop. I'll just focus 100% on my marriage, and I did. And what we found out is we are madly in love with each other. I love her, she loves me, we're best friends, but we're not good for each other in a marriage relationship. We're very good friends, but when you add intimacy or you add a marriage contract, we become toxic to one another. And I hope that can change someday. I would really love to try again. I think she would too, but we got to get some things figured out. For now, we decided we needed to split. And when that happened, I got to go back to being a cop, because what other skills do I have? So I put in for a police department, a few hours away, hoping to give her some space and me some space to kind of reform our lives. And I'd come home on my days off to be a co-parent and to be a father to my children. And when we did our divorce papers, it was funny. Everywhere it said, how much do you need half his retirement? Do you need half her IRA, or whatever? If you need, do you get the car? Who gets the kids for, this? Every single one of those, we marked the box that said other. And then she wrote in, we don't need the government to help us. We're grown-ups. We'll just figure it out. And so the judge signed it. It's been great. We don't have any of that, I can come and go as I please. I can see my kids anytime I want. She can't. We just 100% friends. I went back to being a cop, gave her some space, and when I was at this department I was working for, I kept pulling people over who were living in vans. And so they would show me how they live. They'd show me the inside of their van, and I'm like, I couldn't wrap my head around this. Like, you live in a van. And then I got online, and there's a whole social network of people, van lifers, hashtag van life. They have Facebook pages, and there's meetups, and it's a lifestyle I didn't know about. But at this department, it was a tourist town. People couldn't afford to live there, but they need people to come work there. And so this influx of people would come every season, and they'd live in their vehicles and work in the town. And I fell in love with it. And so I said, screw it, I'm getting a van. So I'm in a van now.
I know. Well, I know that's what I want to tell our viewers, that you are broadcasting inside your van.
Yeah, Dodge Sprinter van. I can stand up in it and everything. I've got a kitchen, I've got a pantry, I've got a bathroom, I've got a queen size bed, I've got a dresser. I mean, I don't pay rent. I pay for gas. I get 19 miles to the gallon diesel. Like, I can go anywhere, do anything. I can work from my laptop now, which I do. And I teach English as a second language. I'm free. My brother called me up the other day and he said, Eric, I really need help remodeling my kitchen. I tore it apart and I don't know how to put it back together. I have a background in construction. I didn't have to say, I'm sorry, can you wait till my day's off? I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I drove, I parked in his driveway. I spent a few days remodeling his kitchen. Another person wanted to see me or spend time with me, my mom or whatever. I drove to Colorado with my kids and parked in her driveway. And I don't pay rent, and it's great.
I can't help but think you're making me laugh a little bit. I'm thinking of that Chris Farley sketch.
Down by the river.
I live in a van down by the river.
Well, I did live down by the river. So before I quit copping the second time. And before I did, I got so into the van life, I moved into a van, and I actually worked as a police officer and lived in a van in that town. And there was ordinances against living in a van in the city limits. So I would actually drive outside of the town into the county. And I did. I lived down by the river in my van.
As a cop. So during the day you were being a cop, and then at night
not camping in my van. And the other guys at the police department started calling me Hobo Cop. And I thought it was hilarious.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that work with heat and all that? I mean, I know you can turn do you have propane or something to keep you warm?
Yeah.
You have to turn on the engine or...
So yeah, no, you wouldn't want to just run the engine. So there's a propane heater that's called a buddy heater, and it's for inside use. The van is ventilated. I wouldn't run it even though there's not been a single death linked to Mr. Buddy heater inside an enclosed space. You know, you only get one shot at life. I don't want to risk it. So I do keep it vented and just run propane. I don't need it in the summer. I need it in the winter. So I got solar panels. All my stuff's plugged into an 1800 watt solar generator with 3 100 watt panels on the roof, and I can't get the battery to run out. I run a TV in here. I run my laptop. I charge all my stuff. I mean, it stays charged all the time. There's nothing I can do to drain the battery. You can't run an AC unit off of it because it just pulls too many watts, and you can't really run an electric heater off it because it just pulls too many watts. But for electronics and everything else, I can't run the battery down.
I think people watching this are going to smile and just say, well, she just had a better attorney and he just got the bad, she got the house.
I guess that would make more sense. It probably would, but we didn't even have attorneys.
No.
Yeah. I'm parked in her driveway right now.
No way.
Yeah, my kids are inside, so I'm spending time with them.
You gotta email me over some pictures. I've got to see you standing outside the van, and that fascinates me.
Yeah.
Well,
it's hard for dating. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, what do you do? Do you pick her up in that, and then when she says, "Well, let's go back to your place," oh, we're at my place.
We're here. No, I mean, thankfully, I'm focused way more right now on like a new career path, and so dating's not really something I've been trying to do. But I haven't. I say it tongue in cheek. It's hard for dating. I think it probably would be, but since I'm not really focused on it, I don't know if just not focusing on it helps or whatever. But I haven't struggled for dating. Yeah, if your pickup line is, "Hey, baby, I live in a van," yeah, you're gonna get shut down. But if you get to know somebody for, even talk for a few minutes, an hour, whatever, it almost becomes an interesting thing and not so much of an uninteresting or for the fact that I could go back to work anytime I want as a cop. which isn't I'm not saying it's a great paying job, but I mean, I could have a mortgage and a house again if I want. I always have had one. It's a choice. And so I'm enjoying it now. And at some point in the future, I may decide to go back to living in an immobile box as opposed to a mobile box. But right now,
you know what, Eric? I think the next chick you meet, she's obviously not going to be Mormon, and you tell her
she could be Mormon. I don't mind
that you live in a van and she still loves you, man. You got to marry that girl because that's a dedicated woman. Then she really does love you.
You'll definitely filter out people that, maybe should be filtered out anyway. Yeah, it's not going to be permanent forever. I'm going to enjoy it. Well, I'm going back to school. I think it's a good thing. It's a good lifestyle while I'm a college student, and it's a good lifestyle for being near family that I've neglected to be near. My career as a cop was very, very busy, and I felt like I time warped 14 years ahead of just time warped, and here I am getting wrinkles and gray beard, and I got nieces and nephews I never met, and it's like I've been so enveloped in my own life. So the freedom of the van life has actually helped me to just anyone who calls me up and says, Eric, we're having this, or the family reunion you never come to, or whatever. I just, okay, well, I can work from anywhere. I can be anywhere and work. And so I can just drive there. I can go see my buddy in Canada now that I haven't seen, So I find value in it for now. And when I stop finding value in it, I'll go back to what I call the hamster wheel, just trying to pay that mortgage or whatever, So.
And so living in a van, leaving the Mormon Church, no regrets?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, they're both completely reversible. If I wanted to, I could reverse course. I'm very happy the direction I'm going. And by the time I go back to a house, I'll probably have enough money saved to just buy one and not have to have a mortgage because, I'm not paying a mortgage right now. So it's, that'd be nice.
Well, Eric, you are a very interesting guy. Enjoy talking with you. I love your insight on the Mormon Church. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for coming on. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to talk with you. It's been very interesting. Thanks for having me.
We're out of here.
No more Roach on Florida TV.